Thank you everybody for coming to my talk on Cyber Threat Intel 101. Name's Daniel Gordon. Thanks for the intro. I'm a cyber threat intelligence analyst. I'm a contractor, a Lockheed Martin contractor to Department of Defense Cybercrime Center, DC3, and that's my Twitter handle in case you guys want to hit me up after this, though I will be in the Discord as well. So this is an overview. I'll talk about who I am. I'll talk about a definition of threat intel. I'll talk about some subsections of it, and then I'll give some resources to learn more, though conferences like this one are a great place to learn more. So, thanks, Kellen, and thanks, everyone, for coming and, looking to learn. All right, here we go. So, yeah, contractor. I have a background doing network defense, incident response, and threat intel. I've got a bunch of certifications, which I won't really talk about. I've got some degrees, which I also won't talk about. I published some stuff on dark reading and War on the Rocks. So if you like reading more than you like listening to me talk, then go check those out. So cyber threat intelligence. Threat intel is collecting, understanding, explaining threats because of the risk that they present. Risk is the reason that information security exists. So keeping it in mind as the thing that you're looking at or looking for is really important. So what's a definition of risk? Some people define it as cost and likelihood and type of impact multiplied together, or some other formula for that. Some people define it as capability, intent, and opportunity. That's a law enforcement description of risk. And some people just think of APTs as risk. APTs are advanced persistent threats. And really, it's a nickname that people use to describe state-sponsored activity, because when there's a country backing something, backing a group, the idea is that they would be more advanced, be more scary, be harder to stop. Turns out, for those who pay attention to the threat landscape, there are some APT groups that are terrible and some that are amazing, and that same applies for groups that are not backed by states. So there are some that are really advanced, even though they're criminal groups, and there are some that are, terrible as well. So that's cyber threat intel in a nutshell. Let's get a little more specific. Hunting is looking through data for bad stuff, both internal to a network and also outside. I'll go into more depth in a second into all of these. It's building and developing effective sharing relationships, because that can really help you defend yourself. It's advising decision makers, people who can implement changes, do things on your network or purchase stuff that can change the risk level of your network, and also attack modeling or building a campaign. Part of that is attribution. We'll say that there are some folks that are not big fans of attribution. They think it should be reserved for governments or certain other folks with special visibility, but I'll go into more depth later, but I personally think that attribution can be useful, and folks should do it if they do it properly, but I'm not gonna go into the debate because we'll be here for a year. All right, so hunting is, if you want it to be effective, you should come in with a hypothesis, a question you're trying to answer, an artifact that you want to kind of build from or look for, because without that initial seed of information that you're working with, you're gonna end up wandering down rabbit holes. You're gonna end up not really having something helpful come out of your hunt. So yeah, you then want to test your hypothesis or try to answer your question using the data that you have available, whether that's log data, whether that's network traffic, whether it's net flow, or it's artifacts on systems themselves, so host-based artifacts. All of those are forms of data that you can hopefully use to answer your question or test your hypothesis, or see if there's something significant that you find. And then it's really important to have output for a hunt. So that means, is this a change that you put into effect on your network to protect against something? Is it a detection, hopefully an automated one, so you don't have to spend time on it every single day, but a way to automatically look for that try to answer that hunting question in the future. But you want to make sure you have some kind of substantive output that you can show for having a hunt. If without some kind of substance to show or result, then you may not have actually accomplished anything. Sometimes that'll just be, hey, there's something on my network that looks broken. Let me go ask somebody to fix this or look at something that needs to get fixed. So it turns out you don't have to just hunt on your network. There's significant value to folks who have the time and resources to hunt outside their network and find, say, infrastructure that's, say, imitating your domain that could be used against you, or infrastructure that reflects what adversaries often set up. Sometimes there are ways to pick up on malware that is being tested or being evaluated in other places or purchased. It's helpful to look and see if credentials from your network have been stolen and posted somewhere, because clearly that would be a problem, something that you want to go reset their account. Sometimes adversaries, bad guys or girls, will post stuff on forums or other places, so you can pick up on that and take action accordingly. And honestly, if somebody has already stolen things from you and they're trying to sell it somewhere, that's something you'd probably want to know about. So external hunting can tip you off to that as well. So I talked about hunting, and external hunting is part of that. So part of the description of things that you can look for in external hunt are described in the pre-attack matrix. So some of you may be familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. It's a framework for describing activity or a model or a taxonomy. And there's a segment to it called the pre-attack matrix, which are things that happen before the attack reaches a network. So these are things that you could look for while externally hunting. Right, so now I've talked about hunting. I'm going to jump into sharing. So sharing is helpful for a few different reasons, but one is that some adversaries will attack, we'll say, multiple organizations in the same segment. So maybe they go after telecommunications organizations, or maybe they go after healthcare organizations, or maybe they go after governments. But being able to share with other folks in that segment can be helpful. And I have a short video to kind of demonstrate why sharing can be advantageous. So let me just switch over to this right quick and hit play and pray to the presentation gods. All right, so hopefully you guys were able to see that okay. But yeah, so the video is just kind of a demonstration. So when somebody, something that is new to you may be old to somebody else, and if they're sharing their information with you, that may be helpful to stop an attack before it happens, and vice versa. So that's why sharing matters. So as I mentioned, there are sharing organizations within segments. So elevator pitch for DC3, but part of the services that DC3 has is a sharing platform for clear defense contractors. But whatever segment your organization belongs to, there's likely to be some kind of sharing organization set up. Oftentimes they're free. They just, because they want people to get involved, they want people to share. But almost anything you can think of, nonprofits, energy and safe energy and power, water treatment, whatever it might be, They often are ISACs or ISAOs, and ISAC is an information sharing and analysis center. ISAO is the same thing with organization on the end instead of center, but it's something that folks, I encourage you to, take a look, see what there is for you to take advantage of. And finally, so there are feeds. So there's some advantages to doing this kind of sharing rapidly and in an automated fashion, reduce the amount of human interaction needed. There are a bunch of different formats for exchanging content, and I'm not going to dive into them, but we'll say that none of them are perfect. The format allows you to instantly kind of take stuff in, process things and send stuff out as well. I guess I didn't include JSON in there, JSON. There are also ways to just share signatures. So these are detection mechanisms to automatically identify certain things. These are a bunch of common formats for signatures. YARA stands for yet another recursive acronym, and all three of these are very common. There are some others, but these are kind of the most common. There are some feeds out there. So these are free things that you can either subscribe to and get stuff that put out by the Department of Homeland Security or the SANS Internet Storm Center, SANS being an educational organization. There's also a whole bunch that folks will charge you money for. It's really helpful to know that we'll say the quality varies, and that may not vary directly in proportion to price. So I encourage folks to, we'll say, test things out ahead of time if they're able to, and validate the quality of what they're getting, make sure it delivers value while they're using it as well. So now I've wrapped up sharing, and now I'm going to talk about briefing. And to talk about briefing, I'm going to use we'll say, examples from an interview in 2010 there's a news interview with Antoine Dodson. I consider this the best interview that has ever happened in history. And here we go. So when you're briefing folks on a threat, it's helpful to first describe the vulnerability and the technique. So this is giving the audience an understanding of the threat, why it's new, why it's interesting, what is special about it. Next, you're going to explain likelihood. You need to tell your audience why this is likely to be something that presents a risk to them. So that really brings it home to most folks. Otherwise they may not, actually care because they don't think that it's going to impact them in particular. And then you want to give specific actions for your audience to take. So here's a mitigation you can put in place. Here's something you should look out for. Here's something you can spend money on to protect yourself. But this is a very important piece of this that some folks, I guess, neglect or don't think to include. And honestly, this applies to a lot of things that people do in life. When you write something or give a talk or whatever it might be, it's important to have some kind of action that you want the audience to take. So that's my explanation of how you brief folks on a threat. So now we're going to talk about modeling. So this is I'm going to start off with the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. I'm a little biased because I work for Lockheed Martin, but this is a framework that's been used across industry and government for a long time. It has some flaws. It's not perfect, but at the time it was created, it did a really good job of explaining what an APT attack would do and breaking it into stages. Each stage would give you a specific kind of things that you could do to mitigate an attack and understand it. The idea is that all of the stages would be required for adversaries to achieve a goal. And we'll say things have evolved a bit, but at the time it was pretty good. There's a saying that all models are wrong, but some are useful, and this is, I've seen it be useful. But yeah, each stage is an opportunity to block or detect adversary activity. You'll notice on this slide, the first stage is reconnaissance, and then on this one, it's recon and precursors. That's one of the ways that it's kind of evolved, because there are things that happen before even reconnaissance happened. But yeah, each stage is an opportunity to block or detect. It's also an opportunity to then go and reconstruct the rest of an attack by, if I stop somebody at the command and control stage at stage 6, I can go back and see what stages 1 through 5 look like, and hopefully take action to detect or block that activity. I can also reconstruct what would have happened if I blocked something early. What would their command and control have looked like? I can put in a block there as well. So a campaign is likely to be multiple attacks, so multiple kill chains. And the way that you can kind of tie them together or build a model of an attacker is by identifying common things across these attacks. And one way to make sure that you're not pulling all of your data from the same thing and kind of being biased with what you're talking about is to use one of these frameworks like the kill chain or like MITRE ATT&CK or other ones, and say, okay, so this element at stage 3 matches on attack number 1 and it matches attack number 2, or hey, the adversary uses the same user agent string in the first attack and the second attack. So that's a way to have some, we'll say, reliability behind your connections that you're drawing between multiple attacks as you're building a model. So why build a model? So you're grouping stuff together, building a model, identifying a campaign. These are fundamentally kind of the same thing. And these matter for a few different reasons. But one is that it gives you a picture of gaps that you should address. So, gaps in your defenses, gaps in your intelligence, whatever it might be. If you're able to predict attacker activity before it happens, that's the gold medal of threat intelligence. If you predict it before it happens, then you can take action before it happens, and that is the best possible outcome for a defender, is being prepared before the bad thing happens. You can also hopefully make risk-based decisions. You can share more effectively if you're able to accurately describe activity in terms that somebody else can understand. Then that can help sharing. It can make your sharing more effective. Yeah, so a bunch of possible benefits. Right, so that wraps up modeling. So now I'm going to give some resources, and I swear by Twitter. So Twitter definitely has its flaws, but these are some prominent people in the threat intel community that I recommend people follow. A couple of these folks, as you see, are SANS instructors. They teach a course related to threat intelligence, but these are some prominent folks that I encourage everyone to follow. And if you want to learn more about cyber in general, these are some more accounts that I suggest people follow. Some of them are funny or enjoyable, as well as being really great sources of information about cyber, but I do encourage folks to check them out. So yeah, that's my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Awesome. That was really good. I threat hunt, so like I was just like, yeah, this is great. No, so we have a question, and I think it's a good question. A lot of people probably have similar thoughts about this, but how do you assess whether a particular threat intel feed is worth the subscription price for an org?
That's a great question. So there are a few different ways. One is you see. So anytime you get an indicator, one of the measures of value is going to be a true positive to false positive ratio, because false positives being hits on things that are not significant, and true positives being things that are significant. So if you have, if you're getting things in your feed and you task them or block on them or whatever it might be, and they start producing value or by blocking things, or you want to see if you're blocking what you want to block. So if you start blocking like legitimate emails from people that you care about, maybe you're not getting good value out of what you're receiving. If you start blocking actual bad guy activity, that's a good sign. but the ratio kind of matters. There's also, we'll say, there's some things you can get for free on the internet, and hopefully you can compare things that you're paying for against what you're getting for free and see if paying for it makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's see here. This is a good question about getting into threat intel and just job postings. They've seen a lot of postings require language skills like Russian or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
So that is definitely a section of threat intel to kind of do research on folks who are talking about hacking in foreign language forums or in on the internet. And I would say that there's a lot of threat intel that you can do without having language skills. I personally have, I speak mediocre Spanish, so I do not have much in the way of language skills that come in handy, but yes, that can be helpful if some of the organizations that are posting those kinds of job openings are going to be, we'll say, some of the more mature threat intel folks that are pushing the boundaries of what kind of information they're able to take in. But honestly, most organizations that have their kind of understanding of their network together at all might also benefit from a threat intel capability, which probably wouldn't involve combing like foreign language forums for who people are hacking.
Right. Yeah. Let's see here.
Also, Google Translate exists, so that can get you somewhat. Don't apply for a job based on that, but that's
yeah, it helps.
Yeah,
it definitely helps. So let's see here. I always hear about CTI feeds for large companies. How does that work? Where does the information come from?
So it comes from lots of things. Some of it will be like honeypots that they have set up to kind of collect random malicious things that are happening on the internet. Some of it'll come from endpoint sensors that they have. So that means like, if they provide antivirus to folks, then stuff that their antivirus is catching. Some of it'll come from things that humans are actually researching and doing. It's often a feed is an aggregation of a whole bunch of junk, and we'll say that that's part of the reason the quality can vary, because some of those sources are better at collecting things that matter, and some of them are not as good.
Right. How would one take the first step to get into threat intel?
Great question. There are folks that say that you should have an incident response background or a forensics background or some kind of understanding of what an attack looks like before doing threat intel. I mostly agree with that. There are folks that just are good writers and like reading about what bad guys are doing and writing about it, and that can make for some, that kind of neglects some of the hunt part of it. But there are folks that are fantastic at sharing and briefing and are therefore able to be good threat intel analysts. There are also folks that excel at hunting and are terrible at briefing. I am hopefully not one of them. But the idea is that trying to be all of those things together isn't necessary to be a threat intel analyst. There could just be something, you're good at understanding adversary activity and describing it, and that might be enough.
Yeah, just to build off our keynote this morning, like you can come into InfoSec with a lot of different experiences and provide value because your background is diverse. And I think that's huge in threat, because like you might have a different idea of how people work based on your background that really helps the threat intel.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. And honestly, I'm proof of that. My undergraduate degree was political science. I built some, well, say technical know-how, but being a good threat intel analyst does not require being coming from any specific discipline or background.
Yeah, awesome. Let's see. Ooh, one last question here. So could you briefly share your hypothesis on how some attacks may have been orchestrated? For example, something like Equifax.
My opinion on how they were orchestrated. The Equifax breach, I think, was publicly attributed to a Chinese hacking group. How it was orchestrated, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will say that if there are some situations where hacking groups are tasked to do things, so somebody tells them to go hack something, and there are some that are more opportunistic, meaning that they notice that a organization is vulnerable, they think it will have some value, and then they go after it because of that. But I have maybe I'm not interpreting the word orchestrated properly, but that's the best I can do for describing that.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.